Hello and welcome to Filmpreneur, the podcast and course that's inspiring and empowering filmmakers to create massive positive change in the world by creating sustainable and profitable businesses. So this is how it's going to work. We are creating an actual audio podcast right now as we speak, and we're filming the podcast. And how we're going to do this over a period of 12 episodes is I'm going to walk through my complete professional story, my career, and actually the story about how Hemmings House was built. Why does my story matter in the context of you learning how to create massive impact with your film company? Well, because we've been building this thing for close to 20 years now. And with building a business over a period of 20 years comes a lot of really awesome wins, yes, but even more so, lots of fails. There's so many learning points that I share with other people that I mentor on a regular basis that I want to deliver to you in the form of sharing our story, a little bit of the legacy of Hemmings House. Hemmings House still has many, many years ahead of it and a lot of more adventures of wins and fails as well. So trust me, we are not there yet, but we are at a specific point in time right now that we're making the impact that we want to make. We are profitable, we're employing really amazing people, and we're telling stories that we want to tell that are truly making the world a better place. So bear with me as I take you through a journey that starts way back in the early 2000s. That was quite a long time ago now. And we're going to go on this journey together, and I'm going to share with you some of the highlights, some of the lowlights, and hopefully inspire and empower you and give you some knowledge to help you as you start your journey into creating a sustainable business and a profitable business that is making an impact in the world through storytelling. So my story starts way back, probably 1993. In 1993, I was in high school, and I was taking the media studies course. And in my media studies back then, we actually had this thing called Video Toaster, which was probably one of the very first digital editing systems. And it was hilarious, super cheesy wipes, star wipes and everything. But for me, I had really no interest in video or film. I wasn't a film guy, wasn't a documentary guy or anything, but I did play in a band called Play-Doh Fish, and I was a drummer. But outside of being the drummer, I was also the archivist of the band. So anytime we did shows, I was the one making sure that they got recorded. I was the one that kept all the posters, all this sort of thing. So for our media studies course, I was like, hey, this might be a good opportunity for me to make a music video for Play-Doh Fish. And that we did. We made the cheesiest video. And I still have it somewhere. It's on VHS. And I did really enjoy the process of, taking videotapes, different VHSs, and combining them and editing them into something over the music that we had recorded. But that was my short little high school blip into video making. After media studies, I never really thought of it again. I went on to university to go to arts, and I did that for about a year. And to be honest with you, going to university and learning arts, it was just an extension of high school for me, and I just wasn't being fulfilled. And I remember going to a party at Christmas time, and I ran into this guy who I hadn't seen in maybe 15 years, and he was my old sailing instructor. And he told me that he had a laser for sale. And a laser is an old sailboat that we used to race a lot when I was kids, when I used to go to sailing school. Anyhow, I was like, geez, I'm living with my parents, so I've got a little bit of money. I've been mowing lawns. University doesn't cost that much money. Maybe I can afford to buy a sailboat. But before buying the sailboat, I wanted to call a professional sailor that I remember sailing with when I was a kid. He ended up going to Canada Games, and he actually used to sail competitively, and his name is Andrew Tidby. I know this is kind of strange. We're talking about sailing right now, but it is going to come to a point here in a few minutes. So I called Andrew, and I probably haven't talked to him in a decade at that point. And I said, hey, Andrew, do you remember me, Greg Hemmings? We used to sail together. He's like, yeah, man, how you doing? And I told him about the sailboat that was for sale. And we talked about that for a little bit, and we did a little bit of catching up. And I asked him what he was doing, and he said he was going to film school. I was like, film school? That sounds way more interesting than what I'm doing, going to arts at university. And within 3 or 4 months, after talking to Andrew back and forth, strictly out of the sense of adventure and not wanting to be bored, I enrolled myself into the same film school. So for 3 years after that in Welland, Ontario, I started to learn the true craft of filmmaking. Now, we weren't using digital toasters at this point. We were actually shooting on real, legit film and film cameras. And the editing process was amazing because back then we'd edit on a thing called a Steinbeck table. And if you don't know what a Steinbeck table is, take a look at it on Google. Steinbeck. Big, massive table with 2 reels of film on top of it and a little razor cutter in the middle. And the hilarious thing about the Steinbecks is there was always this perfect little drink holder that was perfectly designed for a beer, and there was an ashtray. Can you imagine? Like, built into the edit system, they strictly built these things for true editors who love to drink and smoke. I was like, this is ultimate. So, in fact, I think I started drinking heavily during those periods in the dark dungeon of the edit room with the Steinbeck. It just felt right. And we put all the scenes up on the wall. So strips of film, you have to be so intentional when you were editing with film because film is so freaking expensive. So just to give you an example of what film costs, back then for 16 millimeter film, for about 11 minutes, let's say it was 1,000 1,000 feet of film, that would cost about $700. So for 11 minutes, about $700, and that's before processing and all this other stuff. So let's say it's $1,000 for 7 minutes. When you're making a short film, you better be intentional that you're getting the shots that you want, and you better be intentional that when you cut that film after it gets developed, that you're cutting at the right spots and then hanging up on the wall. And then when the time comes to paste it all together in the Steinbeck, you've got a good sequence. So for me, it was a very long and laborious experience, but it was also very meditative. And it really helped me hone into the art of being an intentional editor and being a storyteller that really picks and chooses wisely. And it's really cool, too, looking back at being an editor of film on Steinbeck, where resources are very expensive. It really helped me as well as a director of photography down the road as well, and as a director, because when I'm out in the field, I was always thinking about the editor. I was like, okay, I want to get the editor gold. I know I don't have enough film to just roll on everything, so I better just roll on the stuff that matters, that counts. So we do rehearsals where we don't roll the camera. It's not like it is today where we have video. You can just roll as much as you want. So those days were really fun. Those were the vintage days. In fact, they were vintage for me, but really it was the end of an era because I graduated in 1999, and in 2000, they started bringing Avid editing software into the schools. So I was the very last cohort that was shooting and editing on film exclusively. But it was really funny, though, because coming out of film school, when Tibby and I graduated, we were just desperately looking for feature film work to work on. And I remember going around from production house to production house in Toronto and Halifax and all over looking for jobs. And everybody would say, well, what do you edit on? And we'd be like, oh, we edit on Steinbeck. And everybody would just laugh at us because at that point in 1999, 2000, most of the production companies were editing nonlinear, with digital software. And back then, Avid was the industry standard. And by the way, Avid back then was about $150,000 to get a suite. So it's not like everybody had an Avid suite, but if a production company invested that much money into an edit suite, you better know how to edit as a film student graduate coming out. And we didn't. We had no idea. Anyways, it's just kind of a fun aside to know how quickly technology changes and how quickly this industry changes, which is a little bit of a lesson for us to learn as well. Do not ever get comfortable in the medium or the format or the technology that you're using in the film world, because sometimes it's really easy to do that because we spend $5,000 on a video camera body. We spend $10,000, $20,000. We spend a lot of money on this technology, but then within a year it changes. Think about the iPhone. We all get excited when the new iPhone 10 comes out and we spend $1,200 on it. And then in about 8 months, it slows down and you're sick of it and you're ready to spend another $1,000 on a new one. So we're living in a disposable technology age. So one of the little tips that I like to do as well at Hemming's house is to really focus on spending money on stuff that's going to last a long time. Like for us, it's our lenses. We've got a very robust glass kit here, and we've got a lot of really good lenses. And those will be good for many, many years, where camera bodies, they change so quickly. We've got a couple camera bodies always on hand, but for the most part, we rent. And renting is actually, if you're doing a lot of production, it's not a bad approach because you don't have to commit to buying the new gear all the time. So these are a little bit of tips that we're going to talk about much later on in future episodes of Filmpreneur. But as you can see, right from the beginning of the story of the Hemmings House journey and my career journey, there's been little tidbits of lessons that I've been able to use in my career much further down the road. Lessons that I started learning in 1999. So getting back to the story, after we graduated from high school, my friend Tibby and I were two peas in a pod. We did everything together, and we worked on a ton of feature films as camera assistants in the IATSE 667 union. And it was really funny because, again, working on feature films back then was still all film as well. Despite what I just said, that everything is digital for post, it took quite a few more years for feature films to actually say goodbye to film. So probably another 10 years for film to start to really die out in Hollywood. So on sets as a camera assistant, my job was the clapper loader. So I grabbed one of these things and I'd be like, scene 3, take 2, like this, whenever we had multiple cameras, and sync sound. And that's part of my job. The other part of my job was I had to run around and grab lenses and anticipate what the next lens was going to be that the director of photography was going to ask for. So I was running around all over the place. And the third and most important role of being a camera assistant for me was I was the guy that took the final film mag, the magazine behind the camera, went into the dark room, completely pitch black, opened it up. There's all these gears inside. I had to carefully take out the film itself, put it into a bag, seal it, then put a brand new roll of film in, feed the film all through these gears, and it's all blind. You're doing the whole thing with just by memory. And it's a very complex system inside these film magazines. That's why these cameras cost $150,000, $200,000. It's almost like a really fine watch. You know, watches can cost a lot of money. Swiss watches, they're so finely detailed in the gears and the levers. It's the same thing as a film mag. So I had a really important role. And think about this for a second. I'm at the very bottom of the totem pole in the camera department. And it's my responsibility to take that finished film that perhaps we spent 2-3 hours on that 11 minutes, it's possible, with a full crew. Think about all the salaries on a film set of, let's say, 100 people. So many salaries, so much money has gone into that, 1,000 feet of film, that's 7 to 11 minutes of film. Insane amounts of money. So in my hand, every time I went to the dark room, I could have been holding $25,000, $30,000, $50,000 worth of value, i.e. if I screwed up, we'd have to do all those scenes again, and all those people still have to be paid, right? So very, very high pressure job. And it's funny and ironic that the very lowest person on the ladder, that's their job. So just as an example, because we don't work in film much anymore, but just as a reminder, film is exposed when light hits a strip of a plasticky film, if you will, but there's chemicals on that film, and the light reacts in different ways. So after we're done filming a scene, the DP has filmed that exactly how they want. Just enough light has hit that film strip to create the image that everybody's looking for. If I go in the dark room, and if I mess up, and let's say I open the door to the dark room like even this much, and a little bit of light comes in, the whole film mag can get destroyed. It's like that. You've probably seen old film from the 60s, old Super 8 film, where you see like these blotches of light come out onto the film. That's film leaks. That's light leaks that are either happening in camera or in the dark room. So really critical that we did this right. Another thing that would happen from time to time as massive screw ups is an unspooling. So if you can picture a film reel, it's about this big and there's a little spool on the inside. And if you pick up it in the wrong way, the middle will come up and it'll start to unspool from the inside. And if that happens, you are so screwed. Like there's absolutely no way you can rewrap it. And you can try to rewrap it, but if your fingers go onto the film, just the regular oil that you have on your fingers is going to completely destroy the scene too. So it's happened to me twice. Full insane film reel spool out. And the only way to do it is to take this big spaghetti mess of film and carefully put it into a garbage bag, then put that garbage bag into another garbage bag, into another garbage bag, into another garbage bag, into a box, wrapped into a black covering, taped up, and shipped out. And trust me, you are not the favorite person on set when that happens. And it happens. I'm painting this picture for you to give you a little example about where my early days came from. And truly how some of these disciplines and some of these high pressure environments helped me create the company that I have right now, Hemmings House, with my team. We've been able to build processes based on a lot of these different learnings that we had way back in the day when Tibby and I were on film sets. So for the first few years of working on films, we learned a lot. Now, in the next episode, I'm going to rewind us a little bit to talk about the very first feature film that we worked on. It was called In Her Defense. It had Michael Dudikoff, the star of American Ninja. And we also had this amazing guy named Sidney Fury, who was the director, also director of Superman 4 and Iron Eagle. And he put this beautiful film together called In Her Defense here in my hometown of St. John, New Brunswick back in 1999. And it was an amazing experience to learn because this was a volunteer job for me. But what came out on the other end was somewhat of a massive disappointment in me, going to school for so many years and practicing and honing my skills so I can get a job on a film set, but being sorely let down on my very first feature film set, specifically because of the way people treated each other. And there's going to be a very important episode coming up because it really set the tone for how I wanted to create my business moving forward, i.e., everything that I experienced on that set is how I did not want to run sets moving forward. So really looking forward to stepping into episode 2 with you. I hope you enjoyed this first start of the Filmpreneur series. And, as you reflect, think about what your founding story is. Like, you might be just getting into starting your own business. Perhaps you've had your business already for a year or two already, working in video and film. Or perhaps you're just in film school right now and thinking about starting a business. But recognize how important it is that you pay attention to what's going on at the very beginning of your story. Because trust me, the stuff that you learn and the experiences that you have and how you behave, how you react way back at the beginning of starting your business is going to be threaded all the way through the lifetime of how you build your Filmpreneur business. So make sure you take a look at the written material below this video to figure out what we need to do before we get on to episode 2. Thanks for joining us on Filmpreneur.